Watching the Jazz last night, I mean, they're pretty good.
Yeah,
I don't know if you heard that. I'm not sure if you knew that.
Never said they weren't a good team.
They're pretty good. So the Jazz are 20-5. Why are we wondering if they're the best team in the Western Conference?
Well, by record, they are the best team in the Western Conference, no doubt. But they're not the best team in the Western Conference till they beat the Lakers in the postseason. Then you're the best team.
Okay, so you're on this ship that says until they win a championship, they're not going to get respect.
Is that what I said?
That's not pretty
what
much.
I said. No, that's not what I said. I said you got to beat the Lakers in the postseason. In a postseason series, beat the Lakers. And then you can call yourself the best team in the West. Because until you do that, they are the best team. Frankly, because they have better matchups. They got mismatches all over the floor with you. And you got to figure out how to outplay them. And that's the difference. So I'm not sitting here saying that the Jazz are a bad team. They're a hell of a team. They're 20-5. They have the best record in the league. They're shooting the lights out. Donovan's playing well. Rudy's doing his thing. Like, they're playing great basketball. But again, a lot of their schedule is against teams that are not great. And everybody wants to say, oh, well, Dallas has all this talent and all these teams that they've been playing have all this talent. Okay, great. They're playing awful basketball. Look at their record. So they are a great team. There's no question about it. They're a great team. We see this every year. This is not new. This is not surprising. This should not be like, oh my God, the Jazz they're doing a great thing here. They do this every year. They're a dominant regular season team. They need to show that they can do it in the postseason. They need to show that they can handle their business against the Nuggets in the postseason, then handle your business against the Lakers, and get to the finals. You get to the finals, you'll have all my respect if you do that.
Here's who they've beaten in this last stretch. Hawks at Nuggets, good win. Pelicans, Warriors, Knicks, Mavericks, lost at the Nuggets. Pistons at the Hawks, at the Hornets, at the Pacers, Celtics last night, 122-108. I mean, there's a lot of mediocrity in that. There's a lot of juicy basketball teams in that, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think the Jazz are the best team in the Western Conference. I obviously agree with that. I think they are by far a better team than the Denver Nuggets, just not when they play each other. And I'm not even trying to be a jerk about it, but I look at their matchups with the Nuggets, and I'm amazed that the Nuggets consistently find a way to beat them, and they do it by getting Rudy Gobert out of the paint. It is really that simple.
Yep, they create opportunities.
Yeah, and looking at the way the Celtics played last night, they simply couldn't make enough shots. The Jazz outshot them last night. That was the difference in that game, is that the Jazz are an elite shooting basketball team. The problem is, so are the Lakers. And when you have the matchups that you're going to face against the Lakers, I'm not sure how you deal with Montrezl Harrell on this team. Mm-hmm. If it's Montrezl Harrell, let's say it's AD, Harrell, LeBron, and whatever guard combo you want to put out there. Schroeder and KCP, let's say. I don't know how the Jazz match that. Because, one, Mike Conley now has been out for a couple of nights with this hamstring injury, which is par for the course. He's injured often. They haven't really missed a beat without him. But when you run into this next stretch of games, including the Lakers and Clippers, you got to have Mike Conley healthy. Yep. That's going to be a critical factor. The other question is, can a guy like Montrezl Harrell guard a Bogdanovich? I don't know. Who do you? I mean, if you start looking at this Laker team man for man against the Jazz, like who do you put on Donovan Mitchell?
Schroeder.
I'm probably putting Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
KCP then gets Mike Conley.
Yep.
Right.
Which I would say that those are close. It's really close because Schroeder has a ton of length. He is longer than Donovan Mitchell is, but obviously Donovan Mitchell's a better player and can work around that. So, obviously I would give the edge to Donovan Mitchell in that matchup, but I just think the thing here is that if the Jazz are on offense and we're talking about Lakers defensive matchups, like, even if you do put Montrezl Harrell on Bogdanovich, all Montrezl has to do is run him off the 3-point line. That's it. The Lakers will win that series just simply by not permitting the Jazz to shoot a lot of threes and make a lot of threes and get going. If you just close them out, make their life difficult, and when they don't shoot well, that's the real question. And this is the thing that I think nobody wants to talk about. When the Jazz don't shoot well, they lose. It's that simple. They don't have another way to win. Because of the way Rudy plays, they don't have a way to play interior basketball and impose their will inside the three-point line.
Well, and the other thing is the Jazz are never going to out-athlete you.
That's true,
You
too.
know what I mean? They're not... Bogdanovich is making and breaking teams on three-point shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing it really well. I mean, that's not to slight Bogdanovich in any way, shape, or form. Because when you're putting up 16 points, 4 boards, 2 dimes, he's doing it. And when you are shooting, he's shooting 47% in his last 10 games from 3.
Right.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
When you look at that he's shooting 42% on the season, that's insanity for a guy with that size and length. And I think what is really interesting to me is that he, I would like to say that he can have that impact against the Lakers. The question is, if you're the Lakers, what do you do? What do you do with Rudy Gobert?
Yeah, I think it really depends. I think the Jazz would want to put Rudy Gobert on Marc Gasol, and then I think if you're the Lakers, Marc Gasol is just going to play the elbow. That's all he's going to do. He's going to try to stay away from the basket. Mm-hmm. He's going to try to facilitate from the elbow, and that's going to cause chaos because there's no way that Rudy's going to be able to guard against Gasol's jumper because Gasol can't shoot it. You have to respect it. So if you have to step out to play that, you're not going to get back for the cutting LeBron. That's not going to happen.
I'll be interested to see who they wind up, what that lineup would look like, because when I look at who they generally start there, I mean, you're starting Marc Gasol most nights.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be interesting. Do you start Marc Gasol against the Jazz? I would think so.
I would play with a lot of size against the Jazz.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think that you would see a lot of AD with his back to the basket in the high post.
What I would do if I were the Lakers against the Jazz is I would start Anthony Davis, Marc Gasol, and LeBron James together, those 3. And then with those 3, what I would do is I would, depending on how the Jazz choose to allocate Gobert, so if they put Gobert on Gasol, which I think they would, then I would try to draw Gobert out by putting Gasol just inside the three-point arc or right around the elbow area of the floor, and then let Anthony Davis operate. And if they're going to put Derek Favors on Anthony Davis, I'm going to feed Anthony Davis because he'll eat his ass up.
I don't think that I don't see that happen. I think and this is where I guess the out-athlete thing comes in.
Yep.
Because if you are the Lakers, you're looking for those matchup. Niang has no place in that series.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to have to play.
Yeah.
Favors is going to have to play more. Because, again, I'm curious, what does a Bogdanovich-Anthony Davis matchup look like? That's really interesting.
That's the greatness of Anthony Davis. I mean, he doesn't have somebody who's a apples-for-apples matchup.
I wonder how difficult is it to keep Bogdanovich in front of you if you're Anthony Davis? Because Bogdanovich going to the basket is not an easy
No, it's not.
choice.
But that's a win for the Lakers. That's a win.
Anything that's not a three-point shot out of the Jazz is a win.
It's a win. I mean,
that's
just that simple. So, that's why I say, I'm sure the Jazz in that series, if we flip the coin and talk about what the Jazz would have to do offensively to win the series, I think their key to success against the Lakers is going to be ball movement. That's the only way that you're going to be able to get around the size and length of the Lakers. You're going to have to move the ball a lot, and you're going to have to be very active in your sets. We can't get into this whole thing, and they're extremely guilty of it, and they get away with it because they've played a lot of mediocre teams where their offense becomes a bit stagnant. A lot of times it turns into Donovan's going to bring it up. He's going to throw it to Joe Ingles, who's going to push it to the corner, and then it's going to come back out.
Can you it's Jingles?
Yeah, Jingles. Okay, great. Whatever. The guy, it's just going to come right back to Donovan. He's going to throw it around the wing. It's going to come right back, and then they're going to play pick and roll. And that's where the out-athlete thing comes in again, because when you have more athleticism on defense, when you're guarding the pick and roll, you can cover that ground. So That's why I say, like, I don't want it to come off as though I'm just a Jazz hater, because I'm really not. They're a great team, but I don't think that they have the roster to beat the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. I don't believe that, and part of me isn't 100% confident that they will beat the Nuggets in a semifinal. I'm not 100% sure on that, because they went to the death against the Nuggets in the postseason.
Well, and I think you're seeing Jokic has really stepped his game up. I mean, he is playing incredible basketball.
I never thought he'd be a 50-point guy, honestly. Never thought he had that in him.
But how is he doing it? It's because he's shooting the three well. He is shot the ball incredibly well, and you can see when he gets into the paint, he has multiple moves that force teams to collapse on him. And he winds up kicking the ball out, and they're knocking down threes.
Yeah.
I don't know where this trend stops, though. You cannot be a team that lives and dies on the three and expect to win a championship.
There's so many that do.
Quinn Snyder has said you cannot shoot too many threes if you're the Jazz. He has talked openly about that. And I'm telling you right now, that is the surest way to get eliminated from the playoffs. See James Harden and the Rockets.
Yep.
If you look at the way that the Jazz operate, they only shoot threes. They accidentally wind up going to the basket.
Jordan Clarkson and Donovan Mitchell are really the only guys that consistently look for the mid-range.
Yeah, well, and to his credit, Bogey, Bogdanovich goes to the basket a lot. Jingles will occasionally go to the basket. Mm-hmm. But if you look at Royce O'Neal, if you look at the bulk of their guys, they shoot threes all the time. The only guy that doesn't is Rudy Gobert.
Right.
And he is the guy, he's benefiting from all those threes, because when you shoot a lot of threes, you miss a lot of threes. The best teams in basketball usually miss 60% of the threes they take. Mm-hmm. So they miss 6 out of 10. And Rudy Gobert is cleaning up.
The problem is when Rudy doesn't clean up, that's a transition bucket for the Lakers.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, 2 weeks from tonight, it's Lakers and Jazz.
And I think that'll be a preview.
That's in Salt Lake City, too, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that those, if you're looking at the schedule, those are the kind of games that matter. By the way, the upcoming schedule for the Jazz gets tougher. I mean, you're going to see the Lakers. You're going to see the Clippers. I do believe you're going to see the Nuggets again. So you're going to start seeing some of these teams that actually have talent to compete with
their upcoming schedule. Home for the Bucks, Heat, Sixers. Back-to-back at the Clippers, Home for Charlotte, home for the Lakers, then a road trip to end the first half, Miami, Orlando, New Orleans, Philly.
So
it gets exponentially more difficult. By the way, if you haven't been paying attention, the buzz is really difficult. Charlotte is a very difficult team to handle right now because they are fast, and guess what they do?
Run.
And they shoot the three.
The hell out of the ball.
They shoot the three. And LaMelo is playing at an all-star level right now. Mm-hmm. And so there's not really there's not a gimme game. If it's the Bucks on Friday night,
that's a grind.
That's a must-win.
Yeah.
Because, and again, I just ask, who does Rudy guard in a Bucks series?
He doesn't. He doesn't play. Well, he'll play, but he doesn't. I mean, he's not.
You're going to wind up on Lopez, but what does that mean?
That he's not by the basket.
And what does that mean what does that mean for Giannis to boop throw?
Yeah, nice running shoe,
Giannis. Hey, Giannis. What that means is Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to have a good run at the basket.
Yep.
Because that's a guy who doesn't shoot. So then my question is, who do you match up? Giannis versus
Royce O'Neal.
I would guess it's got to be Bogdanovich.
Nah, he's not athletic enough. Honestly,
I don't know about that.
He's not athletic enough to stay with Giannis.
I don't know about that. All I'm saying is you're going to have to figure out how to match up with teams like the Bucks.
Yeah.
And again, you know what I think is a nightmare matchup? I think if the Sixers are going to be very difficult for the Jazz. Because again, anytime Rudy Gobert is not in the paint, they're going to struggle.
Rudy versus Joel is not a good matchup for Rudy.
No, because Joel Embiid is knocking down the three, and he's playing phenomenal basketball in the paint.
Yeah, and he's got mid-range handle. He's got a turnaround. He's got pump fakes. I mean, he can play.
Eric and Raleigh in this morning on the YouTube chat channel. Warriors proved you can't shoot threes enough.
Yeah, but here's the difference.
The mid-range is a bad shot. The Jazz have to play zone against the Bucks. Leave Giannis alone on the perimeter.
Listen. The Warriors showed you that having 2 Hall of Fame shooters, greatest of all time shooters, allows you to beat teams by just shooting threes.
Well, they had 3 at one point, and what happened?
And they won.
They won a championship. And they shot a hell of a lot of threes.
And by the way, now that neither of those guys are on the floor for the Warriors and it's just Steph, he's still showing you that he's an MVP caliber player.
And what's he doing?
He's shooting a lot of threes.
Shooting the hell out of the basket.
But again, but the difference is we're talking about the greatest shooter of all time. Like Joe Ingles is not the greatest shooter of all time. Bogdanovich is not the greatest shooter of all time. They're really good, but they're not Steph. Nobody is Steph.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see exactly how all this plays out. It'll be interesting to see what this matchup looks like. I'm telling you now. All of these matchups suck for the Jazz. And so will they be able to mature and will Rudy be able to play? Can you match up Rudy Gobert on Giannis? I think that's a terrible idea.
So I like the idea of a zone against a team like the Bucks, who are built like the Bucks, who are so reliant on Giannis to penetrate. I think that if you played zone against the Bucks, that would allow you to essentially play team defense against Giannis. Because to Eric's point, Giannis has improved his shooting a little bit. It's not as bad as it was, but he's not a confident three-point shooter by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he is right there with guys like Zion and Ben Simmons, these guys who just are not willing to shoot the three, and when they do, it looks ugly. So, like, I more feel like that with the Jazz defensively, if they were to run a zone out there on the floor, they would be in okay shape. But I still maintain that when you play zone in the NBA, teams will adapt on the fly. So what you're going to end up having to do is run some zone, then run some man, then run some zone, then run some man. And that tires you out mentally. It's taxing mentally to be disciplined with your assignments in the zone defense. So that's why I say I hate being the guy that constantly brings this up. But if you're going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up. If Rudy Gobert was more talented, we wouldn't be talking about this. If he could shoot more, if he was a little more athletic, like, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, if my aunt were my uncle, she'd have a sitting anyway. My point is, she'd have some cojones.